Welcome to Audio Workstations. It's week 2. It's Monday, and we are jumping right into our remix. Now, these guidelines that I'm using, this is a new document. You did not see this document last week. What you saw last week was the week 1 remix project milestone. So this is a new document. This is up in the course resources section of FSO. At the very top of FSO, as you probably noticed by now, the course is divided into 5 modules. There's week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4 modules. And then above all those, there's a module called course resources. And in the course resources, there is a document entitled Remix Project Guidelines. So that's where you're going to get this document from. This document is going to be a very good friend of yours by the time we are done with this class, because from this point forward, every Monday, this will be the document that we will be looking at. And there's a lot of information packed into this document, and so it takes a couple seconds to go over this. So the gist of this project is this remix project, right? So week 1, we did your remix project milestone. You got your stems from Indaba. You uploaded them or you imported them into Pro Tools. You did your markers. You set your tempo, and you got set to go on your remix. So by the time you were done, you submitted something that looked maybe something like this to you submitted something that looked like this to FSO for your remix project milestone. So this now is taking us further into this project. So all the work from week 1 was a setup to get us to this document. So again, this document can be downloaded from the course resources module, and it is listed under Remix Project Guidelines. So the gist of this project is, this is what this objective is telling you, is that you're taking the approach to this project as if you have been contacted by someone who has a relationship with a band, whether it be a producer or an A&R or whomever, and they've said, hey, we have this band and they are performing and write music in this genre, but we want you to remix this song for this genre. So you kind of think back to your week 1 discussion about what is a remix. So you don't have to think of this remix in the sense of like, okay, I need to remix this. You know, I want to make it sound like Avicii, or I want to make it sound like Martin Garrix, or I want to make it sound like name whoever, right? Calvin Harris, or, you know, some people are like, oh, that's too commercial, bro. I'm talking about these guys, whatever. It doesn't have to be like an EDM dance remix. It could be you're not rearranging, but positioning the song, right? Maybe it's a dance song that you want to make a country song, or maybe it's a dance song that you want to make a metal song. I've heard some students take these remixes from more of like these pop songs and put them into the metal genre, and they're really, really cool. So you can have as much free range as you want to mess with this remix. The idea is that you're approaching this as someone who has been contacted by, like I said, someone who's affiliated with the band that says, hey, we're trying to kind of cross over genres here. We want you to take this in a new direction. What can you do for us? And so with saying that, what we want to be careful about is that we only want to work with the vocals, okay? So the reason why we grabbed a remix with vocals in the first place was because starting this week, we're actually going to get rid of all the vocals, everything except for the vocals in the remix. So for example, I've got kick, snare, percussion, all this stuff. So right now I'm going to take from here to here. I'm going to hold shift. And then, so once again, I'm clicking a track nameplate, holding shift, and then selecting the track below. So instead of just holding shift and selecting each one like this, I'm selecting the first one, holding shift, and selecting this one. So now what I'm going to do is right click, and I'm going to make these tracks inactive. Okay. So now you see those are inactive, but they're not hidden. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to hide these now. So now there's all my tracks, but they're hidden in the tracks list. And eventually we're going to get rid of those tracks, but we're not going to do that right now. Before you deliver this, you'll be getting rid of those tracks. So these are just hidden away in the tracks list. Okay, so this is what we're working with now for the remix. This is what we're starting out with. We just have the vocals in the session. So I'm going to save. Now, one thing to consider, I might want to do this. I might actually want to make these active. All right, and I may want to do a save as. And I might want to call this 1709 Week 2 Demo, Version 1. Maybe not even Version 1, just Week 2 Demo. Because just a way to save versions of the session, right? Just a good habit to get into saving versions of the session. So I've got those selected, so now I'm going to hide those and make them inactive. Not that much difference from the prior session, but again, I'm just trying to get you in the habit of using those that idea of doing save as and working in version and steps in the project so that you can, step backwards if you ever need to start over at a certain portion of your remix. So I'm going to hold Option and I'm going to select Fit to Window. Now I've got all those tracks fit to the window for now. So back to this document. Now I've jumped around here a little bit because I wanted to get to the vocal part first. That question came up before we started archiving about, are we using only the vocals in the remix? And yes, you are only using the vocals as you just watched me explain. The rest of the information about the vocals, don't worry about this right now. We're going to get to that part of this document, but that's not for tonight, okay? So as long as you understand at this point that the only remaining component from the imported Endava stems is the vocals, or are the vocals, because I've got some background vocals in here that I may or may not use. We'll see. As long as you understand that this is the only component from Endava that we are using and nothing else is being used in the remix, then we can move forward. So these are all of the elements that are going to be included in the remix. We're going to have a main rhythm, and eventually these three track types are going to be printed as MIDI, okay, as audio. I'm sorry. We're going to create these via MIDI, and then we're going to print them to audio. Now, if you are the one in a few students that has a drum kit that wants to record your own drum parts, I've seen this once in like the last year, maybe even more than that. You are allowed to do this, but it's a very uncommon thing for a student to have their own drum kit set up and mic'd and record their own drum parts. But if you're going to do that, then let me know that, or let the instructor that's handling and grading your section know that, so that you can be clear with them about what you're doing, okay? And we'll talk about using the comment section and tracks and things like that, so this can be communicated effectively. So you're going to have main rhythm, which is going to be kick, snare, and clap, or both, and hi-hat, okay? And then you're going to have secondary rhythm. So that's your stuff like your other percussion parts, like tambourines or kabasa or shakers or whatever, right? So main rhythms and secondary rhythms. The only pieces that you're eventually going to record as audio are going to be these kicks, snares, and the hi-hats, okay? The secondary rhythms we'll get into. There's lots of ways that we can create secondary rhythms in Pro Tools without having to worry about using any kind of loop libraries. You are allowed to use audio loops for secondary rhythms, but you won't need to do that because I'll show you a way you can do that right inside of Pro Tools, and you can use everything that's stock inside of Pro Tools. So these are the two areas that we're going to focus on tonight. I'm just going to walk through the rest of the document. You're going to record a bass part. I'll give you some great ideas on how you can write some bass parts that I think sound great but aren't that much work if you're not really a musician or composer. We're going to get into talking about doing pads and lead lines and melodic counterparts. Sometimes when students who aren't MPBS hear things like lead lines and melodic counterparts, they start to go, whoa, wait, no, I don't know anything about that stuff. But it's really simple, and I can show you some really easy ways to build some really great sounding lead lines and melodic counterparts. But again, that's not for tonight. That's for another night. Vocals, we've been here already, but the further idea I want to carry is the idea that when we get into talking about using effects like reverbs and delays, that's what is called time-based processing. And so we're going to get into that further on into the course of using these time-based processing, or I should say this time-based routing, so that we can use reverbs and delays in the most efficient and effective fashion on the vocals and other instruments in the remix. I also want to say this. If at any point, like say in the bridge of the song, if you decide that you have a vocal talent that you would like to showcase, whether you rap or sing or spoken word poetry or whatever it is, if there's some type of vocal complement that you want to add to the track, you can do that. But you can't make the track all about you. It still has to be about the artist and their remix, but you can add your own flavor to it. I just graded one from last month where this student kind of did the whole like Migos, who else is doing this kind of stuff? Whatever, like, just name the trap artist really, but like Lil Uzi Vert or whoever, where like, it's just kind of bouncing along. Yeah, that's what's up. Right. Yeah. Just in the background of the song. But it was a pop song and he kind of did it as a more of a trap rap song. But his little vocal elements that he did sounded really cool and it changed the whole vibe of the music. So that didn't take away from the song, but it added this cool little kind of current relevant element to the song. So just something to think about. I'd say there's 3 or 4 students a month that put their own rap on the song, which is fine. The less swear words that you write into your verses, the better. I'm not offended by it. I mean, I listen to everything, so I'm not offended by it. But, just think about how many swear words you actually need to put into a verse to like show like your lyrical prowess, right? So just food for thought there. Then we'll get into talking about the atmospheres, ambiances, and sound effects. This is really one of those last pieces that we get into. Once you get your remix set up and you like the flow of the remix, now you can start to add some of this ear candy in and build some interest between sections and during intros and outros and stuff like that. But again, this is all stuff for conversation later. And then at the very end of the month, we'll talk about your session delivery and preparing the session for delivery. Now, at the end of the document, there is a rubric. Now, this rubric basically tells you just about everything that you're going to get graded on. There's some little nuances in here that, every little 5 points can be divided up in one way, shape, or form, and you're going to understand this as we go along. But this gives you a very good understanding of how this project is going to be graded, okay? So let me stop here and see if there's any questions. All right, so DeAndre, you will see what kind of kits and pianos and stuff Pro Tools has. I will admit it's not as robust as Logic, but you can still put in some work and get some stuff done. So you'll see that in just a second. So very, very relevant question to what we're talking about here. So at the end of the month, I will use a fully completed remix to show you when I go, the very last class of the month, that last Thursday, I basically walk you through this entire rubric. I open up a project and I basically look at the project and go, oh, is the project named like this? Oh, is the project set up like this? Does the project have these rhythm tracks in it? And then I just go point by point by point by point. And if it's missing something, then I'll say, oh no, it's missing this element. I'll add this in, and then I'll add that in real time right in front of you. So I will do a complete cogent overview of the whole entire project along with reviewing this rubric. So as long as you follow along all month and you follow the rubric, then you should have no problem completing this project exactly the way that you're expected to complete it. All right, so here's the big thing I want to mention. Now we're going to start looking at some of the virtual instruments in Pro Tools. Back in week 1, you completed your software installs and updates assignment. When you completed that, you would have installed you would have run 4 different installers for Pro Tools. So you would have run your Pro Tools installer, installed Pro Tools, the actual software application, and then you also would have installed the Air Creative Effects collection, the Air Instruments collection, and you would have installed Expand 2. So when I'm using some of these instruments, these are instruments that you should have already installed based on the software installs and updates document. If you didn't, you can go into your Avid account and you can download those and install those. So let me just look at something here real quick. So if you haven't done this already, it would mean that you submitted an incomplete software installs and updates. You would have checked off the software installs and updates when you actually hadn't finished that. But in your account under My Products and Subscriptions, you have this here. I'm going to show you two different ways to look at this. So here I have Pro Tools. This goes up to 12.7. I have a couple Avid accounts that I access, but this one goes up to 12.7. Actually, I'm running, just so you can understand, I'm running Pro Tools 12.5 on this machine, but this account allows me to go up to 12.7. And then here are where we have the plugins. Okay, so I'm just scrolling down this list, and you would have installed Air Effects Bundle, Air Instruments Bundle, and the Expand 2 installer. Okay. Now, if you've already installed Pro Tools, what you can do is you can go up to your Avid Application Manager, that little purple target at the top of your monitor here. And when you first log into your Avid account, this is the same login that you'd use for your Avid Master account. When you first log in like this, it can take a long time. I'm going to say up to a half an hour for this to actually synchronize, maybe even longer. But once you're logged in and it recognizes your account, you click on this Apps tab, and anything that you have installed will show in a list here. And anything that needs to be installed will say, there'll be a little text over here that'll say something like download. And then once it's downloaded, you just can click and it will install it. So if you want to make sure that you have all this stuff that I'm talking about in the account installed, just open up your Avid Application Manager. There we go. And look under this Apps tab once you're logged in, and you can see there'll be a whole list here, and it'll tell you exactly what you have installed. And whatever you don't have installed, you can just click download and then click install, and it will all install for you. So that process can take a little bit of time because, like I said, it takes a little bit of time for that account to synchronize. But when I start talking about these virtual instruments and these plugins, you'll understand where those actually came from in case you're confused on that, okay? So again, now I've talked about you having the instruments installed. What you need to understand is those will be the only instruments that you'll be using are the ones that are provided in Pro Tools, okay? You're not going to use any virtual instrument that doesn't ship with Pro Tools. So if you're somebody that owns Serum, you're not going to use Serum. I have Serum installed on this machine. I won't be using Serum for this project. If you have Omnisphere from Spectrasonics, I have Omnisphere on this machine. I'm not going to use Omnisphere. I'm not going to use Contact. I'm not going to use Machine. I'm not going to use any of that. I'm going to use just the Pro Tools stock installs, okay? Which some students say, why? I want to use this. I want to use that. Because I want you to create within that limitation and that compatibility of that. If you send your project to whomever section that you're in, they are going to be able to open up your project with the stock Pro Tools because we all have the same plugins. All right? So you'll see as we go through here, I'll explain the use of some of these instruments. I won't go button by button in every instrument. Probably have to do a little bit of research on your own if you really get into using one of them. But I'm going to take you deep enough that you're going to understand how each one works and what you can do to be creative with each one of those instruments. But you might have some Waves plugins that you got along the way that were, maybe provided by Full Sail. Whatever it is, you're not going to use those Waves plugins. There's plenty of compressors and EQs and harmonics and distortion and all kinds of different reverbs, delays, everything. That's all part of these stock installs that you don't need to go outside of what the stock installs are. So that's something you have to be very cognizant of because you'll lose points if you submit something where you have plugins that the system is trying to load that aren't loading up on the instructor end. Okay, so you'll only be using the instruments provided in Pro Tools and the ones that you've installed out of your Avid account. Also, when you go through and you start creating these MIDI tracks and you start working on these parts, those parts always have to remain in the session, okay? So you have to leave all the original MIDI tracks in the session. This is for every single part. Not only for the main rhythm parts here that you're going to eventually print as audio, but for any MIDI that you create in the session. It has to remain in the session. If you submit a remix at the end of the month that does not have any MIDI in it, you'll just get a 0. That happened to 2 students this month that I graded. They submitted a remix. I looked in the tracks list. All I could see in the tracks list, it was much bigger than this, was audio. There were no MIDI tracks in the session. 0, incomplete, because what that tells me is that somebody created the session in another DAW, exported the audio, and just imported that audio into Pro Tools and tried to fake it. And you can't fake it. You got to show your work. So there's plenty of information in these sessions that you'll be able to really get the work done that you need to get done. So just know that all that MIDI has to stay in the session. So the 2 big things that we just went over are 1, only using the plugins that are part of the Pro Tools install, and 2, making sure you leave all your original MIDI tracks in the session. So having said that, let's talk about the main rhythm of the session, and also included in this conversation is going to be secondary rhythm. Now, the reason I say secondary rhythm is because sometimes I find it easier to build the percussive or the rhythmic bed, in other words, using these secondary rhythm elements, and then go in and put your kicks and snares and hats in afterwards. So you can work on it how you want to work on it. But let's just kind of listen to what's going on here, and then we'll jump into it.
The city dripped with neon lights.
Okay, so my tempo is 100 beats per minute. So what I'm going to do this, I'm going to say track, new, and there's 2 different ways I can do this. The first way I'm going to do it is I'm going to create an instrument track, all right? And I'm going to create a stereo instrument track. Now, I want to mention to you that anytime you create an instrument track in Pro Tools, I recommend that you create a stereo instrument track. Not so much for this project, again, because you're only using the stock Pro Tools plugins that are part of the installs, but more for when you use Pro Tools later on and you have third-party plugins. So, for example, if I create a mono instrument track, where do I load this? Well, right here is my column selector, and what I need to do is I need to use an insert. So the insert on the instrument track is where we're going to load the plugin. Now, remember I said you're not going to be using third-party plugins, but I'm going to give you an example. So right now, I am looking for, let's say I was going to look for my Serum plugin. Well, look, if I'm down here looking for X for Records, because that's who makes Serum, I don't see it. I only go up to U. Now, let me create a stereo instrument track. There. So what I'm telling you is that you want to create stereo instances for instrument tracks most of the time because there's a number of third-party plugins that do not recognize the mono instance of an instrument track. So, and you won't be able to find those plugins in the list. So here I'm going to call this, I'll call this 2ND Rhythm, RHYTHM, Secondary Rhythm 1. Okay, because I'm bound to have more than one of these. Now, what I like to do is I like to just copy this name, Command-C, and then I like to paste that name there in the comments. So when I show my comment section, I see that name in the comment section, because if I get my track scrunched up really small, it's not that easy to see the track nameplate, but I can easily see the name here in the comment section. So I like to carry that name into the comment section. And I might even add extra comments in here as we go along. So now I'm going to do a secondary rhythm. So I'm going to bring up Expand 2. I want to show you something. Notice how at the top of the list here I have all the categories of my plugins, but then down here I have all the manufacturers of the plugins. Like there's Air Music Technology. You should have everything that's in this list here. And then also here's the Avid list. You should have just about everything in this list here. The reason I'm seeing these this way is because in my global preferences here, I have my organize plugin menus by category and manufacturer selected. So that's why I'm seeing those in that divided list. So I'm going to go ahead in here and I'm going to pick Air Music Technology and I'm going to go to Expand to. This is the most robust of all the virtual instruments. This has the most amount of sounds and presets in it. You can really come up with some cool combinations of sounds in here because you can layer these 4 different parts. And you can layer these sounds however you want. But also you have a whole list of presets here. So what I can do is go in here. The loops is where I like to go because this is where it's really fun to get that secondary rhythm element going. Sometimes busy shakers is a good place to start. All right, so here I have the virtual instrument loaded, and there's a couple things we're going to go over here in terms of functionality. So right now I've got the virtual instrument loaded on the track. I'm tapping on my MIDI keyboard, but I don't hear any sound coming through. So the first thing I'm going to do is check my my MIDI studio here. And I can see that Pro Tools recognizes this impulse controller. Also sees the machine controller that's connected and the launch key that's not connected now, but that is connected at some time. So I have my Impulse 61 connected and Pro Tools sees it. So I know that Pro Tools sees the controller, but when I play the keyboard, I don't have any sound coming through. That's because I need to record enable this track. And then now I'm able to hear that play through. Now, if I play one key, that sounds good. But sometimes what I like to do is just play 3 or 4 keys to get that sound kind of thickened up. So I'm just going to go ahead and just play. I'm just going to hit play, and then I'm going to press on the key and see if something starts to sound good. Now this is where the click track comes in because I like to hear where the downbeat of the click is. So up here I can see that I do have my MIDI controls showing in my edit toolbar here across the top. So here I have my metronome enabled. So I'll hit play. So now I know where to hit the downbeat.
The city dripped with neon lights. What a sight it was for those sore eyes.
All right, so good enough. I'll just close the plugin for a second. Now I want to draw that note in. I could record that note in, and I will record some notes in here, but this one I want to draw in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go Window, MIDI Editor, and then now I've got a full MIDI editor here, and if I press on these keys, I can... So you can hear as I'm going up in pitch, the loop pitches. So let's check something here. B minor. So I may as well, anytime you see the MIDI window pop up like this, I'm just doing the shortcut. I'm doing Control equals here to bring that up. So I'll play on B. Now I've got my grid at a quarter note value here. It might work nice to have it set to 1 bar. And then I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab my pencil tool. And I'm going to use the line pencil tool. I'm just going to drop a note. That's all I'm going to do is just drop a note there. And I'll just use that trim tool. If you'll notice, I have that pencil tool active. And when I'm hovering over no note, you see there's a pencil there. And then once I drop a note, when I hover over the note with the pencil tool, it turns into the little pointer. And then if I'm out at the end of the note, then I have the trim tool and I can trim that note back. But I just want the the pencil tool, and I want to trim this out for 4 bars, let's say. So I've got the 4-bar note length there. So I'm going to go Command equals back to the edit window. And let's see here.
The city dripped with neon light.
All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and just duplicate that out a couple times. Notice this. Remember last week we already set the tempo. We know that tempo of 100 beats per minute is correct, right? And we can listen to the session and hear that the click is lined up. So when I select this clip, remember when I was in the MIDI editor, I made a note that was exactly 4 bars long. You can see here that it's 4 bars because it ends at bar 5. But also when I'm in this edit window here, if I select this clip, see I'm using the grabber tool to select the clip, look up in the edit selection indicators here. It tells me that I have a 4-bar selection. So now these are time relevant, musically relevant selections that I make. So now I can just duplicate this clip, right? Edit, duplicate. And then I know that these are going to be in time with the music. So let's select these two. You can see up here I have an 8-bar selection now. And listen to this and see what it sounds like.
What a sight it was for those sore eyes painted over their short highs. What a nightmare, oh, for all those times in a wasted paradise. All we do is fantasize.
Now, what I'm thinking is I'm just going to keep doing a secondary rhythm throughout the whole song and just kind of lay out a secondary rhythm. That's just how I decided right now I'm going to do this. So let's hear what this change here. It looks like there's some increased intensity in the vocals here. Let's listen to this and see what it sounds like.
Blue skies tell God I've been looking into your red, white, blue skies tell God I've been looking into.
So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this track. Now again, you don't have to do it this way. This is just the way that I kind of decided I was going to do it right now. So I still have expand 2 on this track. So when I copied that over, when I duplicated that track, the plugin settings duplicated over as well. I'm going to change this and I'm going to call this second rhythm 2. And oops, I need to change this as well. There we go. And I'm going to pick a different one now. I'm going to pick a different preset in here. Okay, look, I'm playing and nothing's coming through because I have this lead vocal track soloed. Nope, too much going on with that. That might be cool. Let's try a couple more. Nope. I don't want anything that's drum oriented like that yet. All right, so let's take this clip here. I'm just going to hold Option, and I'm going to drag that down to that track.
La liberté never die. Red, white, blue skies.
All right, so I'm going to take this now because I actually don't want this loop to start until these vocals start right here. Right, so I'll take my selector tool, click in, and I can see that this starts right around there, around bar 15. So I'll go into the MIDI editor, Control equals, and you can see here that that's bar 15. So I'll just take the trim tool, pull that to bar 15. And I got this little empty piece of empty clip here. So what I'll do is just click right there. You can see I'm in at bar 15. And what I'll do is I'll just do Edit, Separate Clip at Selection. And I'll select that and delete it. Now, I'm going to review something from last week. Remember we talked about this button here, this A to Z button, Commands Keyboard Focus. When that's enabled, we can use like this T to zoom in and this R to zoom out. Well, here's another one for you. So here I am. I'm clicked in at, let me set my grid to quarter note, make it easier to make selections here. So I'm at bar 15. Now I have Commands Keyboard Focus enabled here, the yellow AZ. So now what I can do, because I'm selected exactly where I want to be at bar 15, I can hit the letter A, and that deletes everything to the left of that insertion. If I was to hit the letter S, it would delete everything to the right of the insertion. So I can do Edit, Separate Clip at Selection, and then delete the unused clip, or I can just use A and delete everything to the left of the clip. Now I want to get rid of this part of this clip here. So let's go into the MIDI editor, and I'll just drag that back to bar 15. So now I should have, there we go. Again, now I'm going to hit S, and let's hear what this sounds like.
La liberté never die. Red, white, blue skies.
All right, and I'm just going to duplicate this a couple times. I don't even know what this sounds like out over here.
So did rain on God's design.
Okay, so it's a similar vibe to this here. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to select this clip here. Now notice this. My grid is set to quarter note, right? But look, I don't see any grid lines in the background. I'm in grid mode over here on the left. See, I'm in grid mode. But I don't see any grid lines in my edit area. That's because up here, I need to click this little grid button here. Now I see the grid lines in the background. So I'm going to take this one now, this second rhythm clip that's highlighted, and I'm going to hold Option, and I'm going to drag that. Now, as I'm dragging this, look up at the top of the edit window in the middle at the edit selection indicators, and you could see those numbers are scrolling up there. I'm watching that as I go to place this clip to make sure that I'm placing that on the bar. So there I am at bar 23. All right. So let's listen. Let's listen how it goes from that other rhythm into the original rhythm.
So did rain on God's design.
All right, good. Now I'm just going to follow a kind of a formula here now. I'm not going to overthink this. I'm going to duplicate this a couple times. Now I'm going to take these clips, hold Option, and drag them here. Again, I'm watching the edit selection indicators up at the top. You can see them scrolling. I'm going to make sure I'm landing on the bar. There we go. Probably need another set of those, so Command D. Then I'll grab these again, Option drag these. And I think what I'll do is now take an Option drag these, and I'll just duplicate these out. So just a simple secondary rhythm doesn't really, I'm not that committed to it. I just wanted to come up with something. That's one of my big suggestions I can make to you as you start to work on this. You can get so myopic. In other words, you're so narrowly focused on one little element. I could have got caught up right here in this little section worrying so much about like putting my exact kicks and snares of where I wanted them, and I was trying to get the perfect secondary rhythm and going through so many different presets. It's like just come up with something and just move on it, and don't get caught in the overthinking part of it, because it's easier to go back and change things than it is to get out of like this trance, right? This myopic trance that you can get yourself into. So let's just listen how this transitions out here. Right, nothing going on here. So that's obviously going to be some kind of instrumental stuff. So let's hear this more so.
Red, white, blue skies, tell God I've been looking into your eyes. Red, white, blue skies.
All right, good. Okay, what questions do you guys have? Just that was a simple start. Any questions about what I was doing there? Any of the tools that I used? Anything like that? I see a question about how do you get the loops to automatically play. If I have the plugin open like this, and I pick the loop, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do another track. So I'm going to duplicate this one. Notice here that it's saying the number of duplicates. Well, I just want one, and then it's giving me the data to duplicate. When it says active playlist, it's talking about these clips that are already created. So I don't need that to go with it. There are no alternate playlists. Don't need to worry about that. There is no automation. Don't need to worry about that. The insert is the plugin that's highlighted in the nameplate over here. So I do need that. Sends, there are none. Group assignments, there are none. And then my insert after last selected track. So now you see I don't get the clip. I don't get the clips, but I do get the plugin along here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick another one here. And so the question was, how do I get them to automatically play? I'm just record enabling here in the track. And now when I hit the key on the keyboard, I'm getting the I want something very subtle. I don't want any of those. Actually, let's do that. Let's mess with that for a while. I was going to get some more kind of like rhythmic hi-hat stuff, but let's do this. Let's work on this little section here. We can just work on this little 4-bar section. But we'll find something that kind of sounds cool in there.
What a sight it was for those sore eyes painted over their short highs.
All right, good. I'm going to use that. Now, I'm not going to use that as the sole piece that's going to be my drums, right? I'm just giving myself some guidance in here to get some kind of groove going. I am going to actually put my kicks and snares in, but this is giving me a guideline of what I'm looking for here. Now, I have the track record enabled, and I'm just hitting the key on the keyboard. And you can hear that as I play the different pitches, the timbre or the pitch changes. It's the pitch is following along with the key. So it's key tracking. This is the mod wheel. So I could actually record some of that later on if I wanted to, but you can see right here it says mod wheel closes filter. So it gives me a little heads up there of what's going on with that mod wheel. So again, not going to overthink this. I can actually just duplicate this down, right? I could take this, copy this, and because my link, track, and edit selection is enabled, right? I selected all across. I just triple clicked with my selector tool, and now I'll select onto the second rhythm track, and now I'll paste, Command V, and then I've got those parts now are going to be playing this sound.
The city dripped with neon lights. What a sight it was for those sore eyes painted over their shoulders.
So I'm going to duplicate this again. Guys, this is just one approach. You don't have to model exactly what I'm doing. Just understand the different functions that I'm going through, and then you can take it in whatever direction you want. So I'm not taking the active playlist, but I am copying everything else. So I need to change that first one. This needs to be second rhythm 3. And this one needs to be second rhythm 4. There we go. Now, I'm going to find something that I think I like in here.
Red, white, blue sky. Red, white, blue sky. Red, white, blue sky.
All right, good. I like that. So again, triple click here. hit Command Z, click that nameplate, Command V. What happened there? That's not. There we go. I think I pasted when I didn't want to paste.
Red, white, blue skies tell. So did rain on God's design. You played it cool, then sealed their fate and signed with the world. So
okay, good. So I don't want to play the track too long. Once in a while, there's this little thing with YouTube and the copyrights and stuff. So if I play too much of the track with the vocals in it, I can get a little bit of I can get a problem where the archive will get muted on YouTube. So I want to be careful about playing too much of the lead vocal so that we don't get a YouTube flag going. Okay, so James, I see you're saying that you don't think Pro Tools is reading your keyboard. So what kind of keyboard do you have? Okay, and you have it connected via MIDI? You have the USB cable connected? So what's plugged into the back of the launch key? You have to have a USB cable plugged into the launch key, and then you would be plugged into, if you have a newer laptop, you'd be plugged into a hub that has the USB connection on that end. Okay, and so the USB cable is plugged from the back of the launch key and it's plugged into the laptop? Okay, and then when you do this, when you say set up MIDI Studio, do you see the little launch key? Yours would be bright blue like my Impulse and my Machine are. I would try a different USB port. Do you have the Mac with the USB-C on it where you're connecting to like an external interface or an external USB hub? So you're plugging USB directly into the side of your laptop? Can you try the other USB port? Just switch it. Take the iLock out, put it in the other side, and put the launch key in the one that the iLock was in. So just swap them. We'll do another 30 seconds of this, and if it doesn't line up, we'll have to chat after class. That's one nice thing about getting like a full-size Apple keyboard that's got the numeric pad on it, because you not only get the full use of a full-size keyboard, but it also gives you two extra USB ports, because then you can take the iLock and plug it into the USB port. And so now you've got the full-size keyboard and your iLock plugged in, and you still have an extra port for your other gear. Where'd you wind up, James? So Demetrius has a question and says, all right, James, yeah, we'll see what's going on with that. You might try restarting with the Novation connected, restart with it connected, and see if for some reason the power to that port wasn't getting to the keyboard or something. What's the maximum amount of ports I can have on a hub before I start having problems? I got this really great 7-port powered USB hub off of Amazon. It was like $60. It's in a metal case. I have that connected, and then I actually have a 7-port hub connected to that. So I actually have 14 ports connected, and I have no problem. But my main port is powered to the wall. So that's where you got to get into powered hubs at some point. But I can't tell you that I know there's a max, but I'm running, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 connected to powered ports, and I don't have any issue. So I don't have an exact number for you, though. Okay, so again, just kind of building an idea here, right? Just building a basic idea. So I kind of like the way this is flowing along here.
So did rain on.
So now what I need to do is start to go in and put my main rhythm. So all I did up to this point was just really do some basic secondary rhythm kind of stuff. Am I going to keep all that stuff? I don't know. I just was trying to get going. I didn't work on this session beforehand. I'm just doing this kind of in real time. So now let's go in and start working on these kick, snares, and hi-hats. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those loops that I have in the background as the basis for my guidelines where I'm going to put my notes for my kick, snares, and hats. All right, so let's go here, and I'm going to go, this time I'm going to do it a little bit different. This time I'm going to create some MIDI tracks. Now, anytime you see this window pop up, where you all of a sudden out of nowhere that window pops up, that's because I'm doing track new, but I'm using the shortcut Shift-Command-N. So now I'm going to do MIDI tracks. I'm going to do 4 MIDI tracks here. All right. Now, these MIDI tracks, remember, MIDI is just data. MIDI is not audio. So what I need to do is I need to have somewhere to send this MIDI data to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a stereo aux track. And I'm going to color these a color that feels better than this. So I'm going to use this color right here. And that's going to be my MIDI, and this is going to be my aux, and I'm going to use expand again. Expand drums. Expand drum kit, that's what I'm going to call it. Expand drum kit. All right, and I'm going to put expand on here. Now this is going to be different this time because this time I'm going to take expand and I'm going to load up. Now, if you look at this expand here, you see this is just one of the prior instances I've created. There's 3 different parts that are loaded, but you'll notice that they're all on the same MIDI channel. So they're all playing when that note hits. All these loops are playing together. But this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this instance of expand and I'm going to leave this set to channel 1. I'm going to set this one to channel 2, this one to channel 3, this one to channel 4. So now I have these set to 4 different MIDI channels. Now instead of bringing up a preset here, I'm going to load a part here like this. So this is going to be my kicks. So here I'm going to come in here and I'm going to pick a menu. So I'm going to pick my kicks menu. That's part 1 that's loaded here. And then I'm going to take the output of this MIDI track and I'm going to send that to, notice here, this says this is expand to 5. So I'm going to take the output of this track and set it to channel 1 of expand to 5. Now, when I click record enable on that track and I hit my MIDI keyboard, you see the note is being triggered, right? That's just a velocity indicator, but I don't hear anything. So let's find out why. So here, this is set to channel 1. So look up here, bank A or part A, right? Just like this is part B. Well, up here, I have a little button I can press for A, and then it tells me that my kicks are from C1 to B2. So I need to hit down at C1. There's a kick. There's a kick. So I get my different sounds of kicks from C1 to B2. Okay, so I'll use that one. That's the one on C1. Now that's a little hot. You can see there that this is telling me, you see the yellow that's showing up in that meter? That's saying that's potential for clipping. It's not clipping because we're still inside the computer, but it's saying if you try to leave the computer or you try to hit some type of a converter with that sound, it's going to clip. So I'm not so worried about that. If I wanted to turn that down, what I could do is come inside the plugin here and I could move this fader back. All right, so since I'm there and I did it, that's fine. And now I'm going to bring up on this part here, I'm going to go in and bring up my snares menu. So here's my snares menu. That's going to be here. So I'm going to take the output of this and send this expand to 5 channel 2. And I'll click this B button here, and it says the snares are from C3 to B4. Now, when I'm playing the key, I'm not really feeling like it's snapping the way it should. So let me check my playback engine here. It's at 128 samples. Playback engine affects latency on record-enabled tracks for audio tracks and also for live MIDI. So this is live MIDI. So I might want to drop this lower to 64 and see if this feels better. Channel 2. I'm going to disable that, and then I'm going to go ahead and add it back in here. There we go. All right, good. And then I'll take this one, and I'm going to set this to, see, that's kick, snares. Let's do claps here. I'll do clap menu. And I'll set this to expand 5 channel 3. My claps are from C5 to B5. Not really digging any of those, so let's see what else we got in here. What's this clap, cowbell, and tambourine selector here? Claps D sharp 1. There we go. I like that. And then the last one I'm going to load up, that's going to be hi-hats. Hi-hats menu. And that is C1 to B3. But I need to make sure that I set this output to channel 4. So all the way up to B3. Don't know which ones I'm going to use yet, but I've got all the MIDI track outputs routed to the individual channels on Expand. And then now I can go ahead and start recording these parts however I want to. All right, so checking in for questions, and I just noticed that James said that the restart worked. So he had the Novation connected, was doing the similar steps to what we were doing in the session here, along with the questions I was asking him, and the restart got everything functioning properly. So thanks for letting us know. All right, so let's just check one thing here real quick.
Red, white, blue.
All right, so maybe my vocals are a little hot, so I can go ahead and go to my mix window, and I can just bring these vocals down a little bit like this, right? Or if I wanted to do this out of my edit window here, I need to make sure that I have this I/O column showing, which I do. Anytime you see the green dot show up, that means I'm right-clicking. So I'm right-clicking here. I'm just showing you that I do have the I/O set up here. And then I've got the little V here. And when I click on that V, I get a little fader there in this window too. So then I also have my left and right pans. So if I go to my mix window here, left and right pans are here. Same thing, these little ones here. Now you see this little, right there, there's a little, looks like a little fader. If I click that, then I get the output window for this track. So if I click that, then I get the output window for the track. So different ways you can adjust those volumes, but I'll just bring those volumes down a little bit. Now, I'm just going to go back to the front of the session now and play and just listen to this drum groove. Boom. One. So it's a pretty easy part. I'm not going to try to play the part. You could play the part if you wanted to. If I want to try to record this, let's name these tracks. I'm going to say kick 1 because it always seems I wind up with more kicks. So I'm going to copy that and paste it in here. Oops, I didn't copy it. Command C, Command V. There we go. Next one. That was what? Snare. Next one. There's already one. So I'm going to call this... there's already a track called Snare. Snare 1. I'm going to click OK because I'm trying to remember how I ordered these in the Expand plugin. Kick, snares, claps, hats. Okay. Claps 1. Clapas. Claps 1. And hats 1. Nope. Next one. Wait a minute. What is going on here? Claps 1 next. Hats 1. I'm trying to look down through my pop screen when I do this, and I think I'm just confusing myself more than helping myself. There we go. So now I've got my tracks named here. It just makes it easier to see what I'm doing here. So if I was going to record these, I might want a count off. So let's do window transport. And then right here is my count off. So I get a 2-bar count off here. And then I might want my click enabled. So I enable my click. And then I could just hit record. And then now that that's flashing, I can hit play. Put the record enable on that track. And then I'll just go ahead and now that the record button's flashing, I'll just hit play. 2-bar count off. Now I just played a basic pattern and I can go in and delete the ones that I don't need now. So I did that undo So now I'm record enabled, record standby, hit play, and I'm just playing. That's all I'm playing. And then I'm going to delete out the ones I don't need. So I'm not exact in my recording, okay? But you get the basic idea of how I got to record those parts. But now I'm going to have to move some of those notes to get them to line up with the secondary rhythm, because eventually that secondary rhythm is not going to be playing those kick parts. I'm going to filter that out eventually. So I'm on the kick track, and I'm going to hit Control equals. So I've got my MIDI notes here now. That's pretty quiet. Now notice when I solo that kick track, nothing plays through. So I need to go to this expand track here. I'm going to hold Command, and I'm going to click this solo button. So now that track is solo safed. So now when I play the kick track and it's soloed, it's still going to play through the aux track where the virtual instrument's loaded. All right. I like that B one. I like that kick better. So let's go into the MIDI editor here, and I'm going to click on that note. So all those MIDI notes are selected. Now these notes are at the front. These are right at the front of the session. So I just need to click and drag these up. All right. Now again, we do see grid lines here, but I'm in a very low resolution grid. So let's go into 16th note grid here. So I'm going to start moving some of these notes around. Select those notes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command M, and I'm going to mute these notes. And I'm listening. I'm looking at the notes on the screen, but I'm listening to the groove that's playing. So that one needs to go there. Oops, I moved them all. So now I'm going to re-enable this, Command N. That one doesn't need to be there, so I'm just going to hover, click it, and delete it. Delete those notes. I just double clicked. Just double clicked there. So it's pretty much just a super repetitive pattern. As a matter of fact, now I could probably go in here and just grab that piece. So look, that's just a little 2-bar selection there. So I'm going to do Edit, Trim Clip to Selection. I got a little note that's hanging off the side there. So I'm going to hit Control equals to go into the MIDI editor. I'm just going to select that note and delete it. Now there's a little ghost note. There's a little ghost kick in there. See if you can hear that. Nope, not that. This. It's actually in this one. So what I might want to do is this. I might want to put that little ghost note on a different pitch. Maybe that one. Now I just have the grabber tool that I'm using here. I could be using the pencil tool, but I'm just using the grabber tool, and when I want to drop a note, I'm just double clicking. And the reason why it's a 16th in length is because this is my default note length, and it's set to follow the grid. Follow the grid, and my grid is set to 16th note here. So that's why when I double click with that, see, it's like a lasso tool, but when I double click, it drops a note for me. Okay, and then I'm going to reduce the velocity. So you see here, I'm looking at the velocity. So I'm going to just reduce the velocity of that note. Now, instead of having to drag this velocity every time, I could change my default velocity. So this velocity, look over here, like right about here, when I click that note. Watch this blue dot. That's all you're focusing on. In other words, watch this little area right here. I'm going to click this stalk right here, but you're going to watch over here. See, it says 70. So what I could do is I could change this value to 70. And now these notes that I drop will be set to 70. So let's delete that. Double click. There, now it's at 70. I think that one wants to be here. And I'm just selecting back to the front of the clip here. Now let's solo this and hear what it sounds like. All right, so we'll go to the snare, and I'll just place those notes in that. Now, notice here, look, I'm looking at the kicks that I've just placed in this particular track, right? Over here, you can see on the left that the snare is selected, but that little pencil tool is not on the snare. So I need to move that down to the snare. And then you see these two little bullets here? I don't want to see those kick notes in the background right now, so I'm just going to click that bullet and watch. When I click the bullet here on the kick track, you're going to see the kick notes disappear. So now I'm just looking at snares. Remember, they're up at like C3. Now, that default note length is going to be off. I'm going to push that back to 127. Maybe I'll use the pencil tool this time. Super simple, just dropping those on the 2s and 4s. Maybe I like those better. So, oops. Select them all, drag them down. Maybe I need a little variety in those velocities. So I just pull these down like this. Just just kind of just vary the velocities of these. All right, so I'm going to take this clip now, take my grabber tool, hold Option and drag this clip down. And now I'm going to go into my MIDI editor again. So Control equals Window MIDI Editor or Control equals. And those claps I think were up here. Oh no, it was on like D sharp 1, I think, is where the clap was. Right there. So I'm going to take those notes and just drag them down because I'm in grid mode. And I'll go into the mixer. Pull that snare down a little bit. All right, and then now I just want to do the hat part here. So let's see what we got here for hats. Let's do this. Let's take these 3 clips and let's duplicate those out a couple bars. So let's go Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D, Command D. We'll go there. So all those, hit save. All right, so for this instance here, what might be beneficial is if I use one of my event operations. Now, there's a lot of different event operations I can use. This one I'm going to use input quantize, and I'll go further into event operations next week too. But this time I'm going to enable input quantize, and I'm going to leave it set to 16th notes. Now, when I record, everything's going to be quantized for me. So let's try this. So my track is record enabled. Up here I have my transport showing in my edit toolbar. You can see that I can just click my transport controls up here instead of having to show my floating transport here. I can just see that up here. I've got my count off enabled. Okay, so up to that point. Now what I like to do is go right into the MIDI editor, Control equals, and then I can see that those are on the grid now. Now maybe I want some I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to hold Option. Now look, I'm holding Option with the pencil tool, and it's turning into an eraser. Now, let's see something here, though. Nope. All right. So that's turning into eraser. So I'm going to go to the, I can do 2 things. I can hold Command Option with that pencil tool active, and you can see that I get that little plus sign, and that allows me to duplicate. Or I can go to the grabber tool and Now with the grabber tool, I just hold Option and I can duplicate.
The city drifts with neon lights. What a sight.
Now I can even go into Expand now. And if you look at the bottom of Expand, you've got two effects patches here. And then you see you've got FX1 and FX2 on each one of these parts. So I could say, well, I want to send some of those hi-hats into the hall, and I want to send them into the chorus.
The city drifts with neon lights. What a sight it was for those sore eyes. Painted over their short heights. What a nightmare, oh, for all those times. The paradise all girls fantasize.
So I can just write those parts in, and that's all I need to do right now. So you got two different ways that I've used these tracks. I've used the instrument track where you just have one channel that everything is on, and so all of these are lined up on the exact same MIDI channel. All right, and you can layer sounds that way too. But then in this instance, I've got these 4 MIDI tracks, and then those are all triggering the Expand track, which is the auxiliary track. And now this is set to 4 different MIDI channels here for each individual MIDI track to trigger a separate MIDI channel in Expand. So you can really see how much mileage you can get out of this one particular plugin. And I mean, what did I only grabbed like 3 or 4 different drum sounds and 1 or 2 different presets. So you can spend a ton of time digging through this virtual instrument to find this. So remember, all that stuff is in your Avid account. Remember earlier on in the archive, I told you about going and using your application manager. So if you missed that part of it, you're going to have to go back to the front of the archive and watch from the beginning, because I had a bunch of information in there about where the virtual instruments are and how you can get those loaded into Pro Tools. Using the MIDI editor isn't necessarily easier. Just for me, it's easier to draw these particular parts in, but you can just record the parts in, if you'd like to. So yeah, remember I created the auxiliary track, and then I have these 4 MIDI tracks. And then I routed the outputs of those MIDI tracks to match the channels that these parts are set to, because these are set to 4 different MIDI channels here. So maybe I want to go into this hats track. Oops. Now look at this. If I double click here, you see how this is set to rename the clip? I can change that. I can go into the preferences, and I can say that the double click prompts double clicking a MIDI clip opens the MIDI editor. And now when I double click this, yours may be set up like that by default. And then now I'm right in the MIDI editor. So let's do this. See, these velocities are actually quite varied, but they're all the same between these 3 copies, because I have 3 different pitches playing 3 different parts here. So remember, I just went and selected each individual note, and then I could change the velocity on an individual note here. But look at this. I'm going to select all these notes, and now I'm going to go into these event operations and change the velocity. It says set all to. Well, let's say I'll set them all to like 120, not full velocity, but maybe like 122, right? But then I'm going to go ahead and click randomize, and then I'll randomize these by whatever percent. I just click there. So then I got that random amount of velocities. And notice when I select those notes, you see the highlighted notes down here in the velocity. See, those notes are highlighted there. So I'll say set all those to, and then I'll do an even more random number there. So let's listen now. And again, you can just drag them one by one, or you can use that event operation to change multiple velocities at one time. Demetrius, can you have more channels on one aux? Not sure what you mean. Let me show you what I did, and maybe that'll help to clarify. So the maximum number of channels that I can have on this expand plugin is 4, because I only have 4 channels here that I can use this on. So that's the maximum number I can get for this particular instrument, right? Now there's another instrument that I can do that with, which is structure, that we'll look at here in a second. So what about per aux? Ernest, I can't put any more virtual instruments on this aux. So I couldn't stick another expand on here. I can only have this one expand on the aux. And then George Thomas said, is it, or are there, I think, are there examples on how to do that? Not sure what you mean by that, George. Okay, so I'm just thinking through, like I just did the example of how to set the aux up. So if it's not clear, just go back in the archive and watch it again. I mean, if that's the direction that you're going, I did give the example of exactly how to do it, but I'm going to do it again because I'm going to use structure free, and I'm going to try to do something for that next part there. Yeah, Demetrius, so to have more, I would have to have another aux. Yeah, so actually, let's do this. I'll do it with, now I'm going to do it again for the next part, but I'm going to use structure free, but just know that you could use expand 2 again if you wanted to. So right here, now I'm going to work on this section here. So I'm going to do my new tracks. I'm going to do 4 MIDI tracks, and I'm also going to do 1 stereo aux track. Okay, and I'm going to color those, that color there. No, it might seem that way, Ernest, because of what I'm doing, but each aux can handle as many. The aux is just passing signal through, right? So let me show you this. Let me show you this so that it makes more sense. I could actually bring up, on this, I could bring up contact. Maybe not. Okay, so I can bring up contact here. This is Native Instruments contact. Now I'm just double clicking and creating instruments here. These are just empty instruments in contact that I'm creating. But you see here that has the output. So each one of these outputs is just routed to stereo 1, 2, which that just means that output is routed to this aux here. This aux right here. So in contact, I can basically have as many of these instruments as I want, because if you look here, see I have 1 through 16, 17 through 32, 33 through 48, 49 through 64. So I can have up to 64 of these instrument modules, and those all could be routed just to that stereo output. So really the number of devices playing through the aux is determined by the software interface that's loaded on the aux. But the aux itself is just passing a stereo channel of audio. Right. So to clarify what Gerard's saying is Gerard is kind of helping to clarify here. So this expand has 4 channels. All of those 4 channels are routing to one stereo output, this one stereo output. That stereo output is showing up here in this channel. So these 4 channels are routing into the 4 available channels that are on expand. Whereas if I was using that instance of contact, I could have up to 64 MIDI channels that were triggering these instruments, but it would still only be routing to the stereo output of expand. So let's do this. Let's put structure free on this one. All right. Now here I can only load up to 4 parts. So just the same way that Expand 2 has a max of 4 parts available, that's as fixed, right? Structure Free operates very much the same way. I can only have up to 4 parts loaded. So if I click in this menu here, then I can look and pull up, say like this 80 electronic drum kit. And so this is going to give me, I got to route my channels. So here's my Structure Free 1, port A. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to route these 4 to structure. So there's A1 there. Let's name this Structure 1. Okay, port A, channel 1. Port A, channel 2. Port A, channel 3. Port A, channel 4. So those 4 channels are now routed. Let's call this kick. We'll call that kick 2. We'll call this snare 2. We'll call that claps 2. And we'll call this hats 2. Nope. Hats. There we go. So I've got that first sound loaded on Structure Free. Okay, there we go. So let's go into the edit window. Let's listen here.
Red, white, blue skies. Red, white, blue skies.
So that's a pretty simple part. So I'm going to go into, it's basically 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So let's just record it in. So we got the count off. We're starting at bar 15. Recording on the kick track. I got a count off. All right, let's check it. Now look at this.
Red, white, blue skies,
so you see it's extending out into the next range because this is a 2-bar selection. Look up at the top where it's highlighted, 2-bar selection. This clip that I recorded is a 3-bar selection. But look, I can say, well, no, tell this length to be 2 bars. Now look at the kick here. See, it's 2 bars. So then we'll do edit, trim clip to selection. There we go. So now it's 2 bars. Look up in the edit selection indicators. It's 2 bars now.
red, white, blue skies. Red,
So let's go down to the kick track. The snare. So we need a part, right? There's nothing in the structure free yet to play. So we're going to do load a new patch. I don't like doing it that way. I like to do an empty patch, add an empty patch. And then I like to look in this list like this. Studio drums, what's this got? I'll use that one. Not super happy with it, but I'm going to use it. So this should be pretty easy. Start at bar 15. I got my 2-bar count off. I could do this. I could take my smart tool and just drag back and just drag that back. Again, when I'm dragging this like across here, I'm watching up here to see when I get to 2 bars. Now I got an extra note in there that got recorded. Those toms. So see, I just click that note and then hit delete, and then those are gone. Oops, undo. Okay, now I need a clap track, but I got to load a patch. So I like to do add an empty patch. And let's do the 90s electronic kit. Now I'm not playing the claps because that has to be record enabled. Oh, I like that. So that's easy. I'll just take that. Now watch this. Command C, and then remember, because the AZ button is enabled up here, I did select the clip, Command C. Now I'm just going to hit the semicolon key, and now I'm going to hit Command V. And then let's do hats too. Got to load something in. I got an idea here. Let's do add an empty patch. And electronic percussion. What's this? A lot of crazy stuff in here. Right up at the top, there's some cool stuff. I kind of like that one. So now I might want to have a little bit more range to play with here. So I'm going to select these 3 clips. Again, look, I'm verifying that that's a 2-bar selection. Now I'm going to duplicate 1, 2, 3. So now I've got this full range of 8 bars to mess with for this part. So let's go record. Okay, a little too far extended out there. Trim that back. Again, I'm looking up at the top middle of the screen at those edit selection indicators, and I can see there's an 8-bar length up there. So I know I'm trimming back to the proper length.
Red, white, blue skies, tell God I've been
trim this one back too. And so now I can just make this easy on myself, and I'll just take these parts and I'll option drag, put those over here. Again, I'm watching up in the edit selection indicators to make sure I'm landing at that proper bar beat location, you see, because now they're matched up there. Select across these. Zoom in, see, that one starts at 35.1. Those start at 35.1. So this is a total of 12 bars here. So I may as well select 12 bars here. Now watch, if I select this bottom clip, watch what happens. You see how it winds up selecting everything? So this is what I do. I'm holding shift. See, I can verify that I have a 12 bar selection. Still holding shift, still holding shift. Now, remember what I said, that AZ button's enabled. I'm still holding shift. I hit semicolon. Now I option drag. Okay, you see how it pulled that clip out? So I'm going to use a different version of the grabber here. I'm going to use the separation grabber. So again, I go back in, got my 12 bar selection there, hold shift. Now I'm still holding shift. I hit semicolon. Now I hit option and drag. See? So the separation grabber separated that clip out for me and made it really easy to work with. And then here I'm going to select across these. This one I'm just going to duplicate, and then I'm going to drag this over to where I think it should start. Zoom in. Yep, they're starting at the same. Duplicate. And I'll just let that play out like that. So there. So now in that short period of time, I just get my whole layout for my vocal section. I think the vocals are a little low. I'm not worried about that right now. But do I like it? I don't know. I'm probably going to sit back this week and listen to it a couple times and see what I came up with. But what I didn't do was I didn't overthink it. I don't care if the drum parts are super simple. I don't care if the drum sounds aren't all that great. I don't care if everything is perfect. I just got something that's a basic rhythmic bed. So when you submit your image this week, okay, because you have a milestone to submit, and one of the images you have to submit is going to be your rhythm tracks. So really, this is what your screenshot should really look like, okay? Should look like something like this. And just go with it. Just roll with it. You're going to have to go back through this archive and watch it again. There's no way that you got everything out of this archive by watching it one time. You're going to have to go back and watch it again, pause, stop, watch how I did the routing, look at some of the things and expand, look at the way that I was editing MIDI notes, experiment with things, right? It's going to be a process. It's going to take you a while to do this, but that's how you're going to get good at it, by going through and chunking it out and working step by step. So I'm just going to leave it as, I'm not even going to say you should go back. You're going to have to go back and watch the archive again to get the steps. But if you do it and you chunk the process out and you understand that you're not going to do this in a half an hour on Sunday, that you're going to have to spend a little time over the next couple of days working with this, you'll walk away from this week's exercises and work having a really, really great understanding of really a lot of the basics of editing in Pro Tools. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and call this the end of the archive. If you have any questions, please get in contact with your instructor. Remember, we're back here on Thursday, and we're going through Pro Tools Assignment 2, going through a lot more information about editing and Pro Tools and functions and processes. So have a great couple days. We'll see you back here on Thursday. Take care. Bye-bye.